Well, you know you have made it when the President of the United States references your TV show at this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner. In this case, while Barack Obama is ribbing Republican John Boehner, famous for his fake tan.
And I'm feeling sorry, believe it or not, for the Speaker of the House as well. These days, the House Republicans actually give John Boehner a harder time than they give me, which means orange really is the new black.
That was Taylor Schilling, but the clip was President Obama referring, of course, to the critically lauded Netflix show Orange is the New Black.
Oh, my God.
It's a powerful and award-winning series that chronicles the complex and diverse characters found in the fictional women's prison of Litchfield, New York. The highly anticipated second season was recently released, and though Orange is the New Black continues to find humor in absurd and even difficult situations, it's also taken a decidedly darker turn. As have the characters played by my next two guests, who you heard yelping and screaming there. Actor Taylor Schilling stars as Piper Chapman, a doughy-eyed, white, middle-class New Yorker who finds herself in prison for a crime she committed a decade earlier, and actor Uzo Aduba, who plays Suzanne Crazy Eyes Warren, an inmate with mental health issues who struggles to find her place in the prison. Uzo Aduba and Taylor Schilling are both here with me now in Studio Q. Hello, Uzo.
Hi.
Welcome back, Taylor. You're clapping.
Thank you. I know. I don't know why. I'm
Yeah.
really.
You're screaming, you're clapping.
I'm so. I guess I'm kind of rowdy. I'm really excited to be here. I like it here. It's great.
Well, you were there when President Obama at the White House Correspondents'
Both
Dinner.
of us
You were
were.
both there.
I
Okay,
mean, I have to say, it's a moment that I will never, ever, ever forget, because it kind of felt like for a second there are so many. Have you ever been to the White House Correspondents' Dinner?
I don't get invited to things like that.
I don't know. There's so many people. I kind of thought. I don't know about you, Uz. I thought for a while, it was going to be like an intimate dinner at the White House.
Yes.
I was really excited
like you
about
and the
that.
president, the first lady,
Sort of.
the kids.
I thought like maybe there would be like different tables, but we'd all be like at round like cafe tables, and the president would be at the front or something. That's not what it's like. It's like a Hilton, and there are like 4,000 people in the room.
Yes.
So I sort of was having this moment of, it was a little overwhelming and taking it all in. And who did we just meet? That comedian?
Kevin Hart.
We just met Kevin Hart.
Yes.
I was having trouble coming down off of
Yes.
Kevin Hart. We're sitting there and the speech is going on. It felt very impersonal, sort of. And then I was sort of observing it, like almost like I was watching it on TV. And then he said that, and it was snapped back into reality very quickly.
Yeah.
That we were actually here,
Yeah.
and it was happening, and that he possibly even knew who we were.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling very anonymous, and
Yeah.
then he said that, and it was like, wow.
And
we
then it
belong
kind
in
of
this
became
room.
that intimate White House dinner in that moment.
Yes,
because
it
he was
did.
talking like to us. Like
You know, it's interesting you say that, Taylor, that he may have known who you are, or at least the show. Because I read that sometime during that night, it wasn't him, but you were mistaken for Amy Poehler, the comedian. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I saw that in a picture afterwards, and I was like, that's very flattering. But clearly, no one had any idea who I was. Who is this woman? They're all asking their friends, ma'am, what are you doing here? Who is she?
You were like those party crashers a few years earlier.
I
at the White
was. I
House.
was like the desperate housewife of 2014.
Uzo, I mean, other than a shout out from the president, which alone is a pretty great thing. I mean, how has your life changed?
It's changed in that before I used to ride the subway and could be hanging out and just, to and fro wherever I was scotting about in New York City, to now, running the New York Marathon and people yelling like, "Go Crazy Eyes," like on the train.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a crazy new experience in that way.
Is it a good experience?
Yeah, it's a different experience and certainly good. I mean, I appreciate anybody who wants to express their love for the show, or I feel, humbled by it. But it's a new experience. It's a different experience in being on the train, especially now as people are becoming, more familiar with like myself not like being crazy.
You look remarkably
coming
different
on the train. Oh yeah, I would hope so. Somewhat. I hope I don't wear a jumpsuit in real life, But it's an interesting experience for people to know you or know something about you without you knowing anything about them. That's that's an interesting experience.
Well, I want to talk about the second season, which has just recently been streaming on Netflix. This season, the second season, is a darker season than the first one. When you arrive in the show, Taylor, in season one, I mean, you're the wide-eyed newbie. Piper Chapman this season, the second season, has a lot more edge. What are your thoughts on the evolution of your character?
Well, I think that she's been moving from someone with a great deal of investment, necessarily so, in what other people think of her, and sort of maintaining the status quo, and coming from a very waspy, sort of uptight upbringing, and has, over the course of time, sort of is starting to be stripped of these things that aren't really her, and these masks, and these old ways of making her way through the world that no longer work for her. And as she's losing more, as she's and having less and less to lose, she's discovering more and more who she really is. And there's a fearlessness and a recklessness that's emerging as she no longer needs to be someone for the people on the outside. And I don't think she knows who that person is now. And so it's neither good nor bad. Who knows what behavior will emerge from that? But the rules have changed. She's no longer as boundaried as she was. And I think it's so interesting to watch those layers be peeled off of a human being and see what's left when you really aren't doing it for your family, and you're not doing it for your neighbors, and you're not doing it to keep your job or your husband or your whatever.
I think one of the interesting things watching your character, especially in the second season, is that she has edge. And I don't mean edge in the traditional sort of way, but there's this new rawness to her, this evolving rawness.
Yes.
Do you think it's sort of inevitable if you spend time in prison that you have to find your own unique edge or learn edge?
I think that there's something in that when you slow down, when you are no longer able to engage in sort of the activities that kind of distract you from yourself, and you really have to get really honest, which is something that I think prison or any kind of bottoming out situation in your life makes you have to look at. It's that this is the reality, and I can no longer mask it with behaviors or relationships or anything. This is the reality. You are left with a level of honesty that you can't hide, and I think that can kind of become edge, that can become rawness, that can become vulnerability, but there's an honesty that brews from being still and having your externals stripped away from you.
So what about you this season? I mean, not only do we get more of your character's backstory, but we also see another side of Suzanne Crazy Eyes. And you've said that this season has made you rethink your original view of your character without giving too much away for people who haven't seen it. How so?
Well, I mean, it certainly helped me to anchor into the name that everybody is calling her in terms of seeing even more of that personality trait on display.
What do you mean?
That some of that aggression, or I say, I call it passion, but it's a passion for life, and it's a passion. She's she's someone who finds herself in infatuation and in love often, and is a loyalist to a fault. And because of that, she may head down roads that are less welcoming or are harder to understand than other roads when she's just in the love side of it.
You just referred to the name that other people call her. You don't call your character by how most of us know her, which is Crazy Eyes. You don't refer to her that way.
No.
Why not?
I don't refer to her that way. Number one, she doesn't refer to herself that way, ever. She's like, it's Sue, which is short for Susie, which is short for Suzanne. That's my name. And it's funny because I think it's really interesting, being somebody who has a different name, than what, say, like when I was growing up, I had a name that wasn't common in my area, and telling somebody what your name is and people wanting to abbreviate it or call you something else.
Like, can I call you Ooze?
Yes, yeah,
Sure.
or and I don't mind a nickname or anything like that, but there's a moment where she has very clearly said, this is what I call myself. It's not like she said it's Sue, which is short for Susie, which is short for Suzanne, which is short for Crazy Eyes. Like, she didn't say that. She was like, it's Suzanne. She very clearly states what her name is, and yet people are choosing to call her something else.
You've also said that, one of the challenges of playing this role is that you want to make sure that you don't play into stereotypes of your character. What are those stereotypes, and what's the strategy for breaking free of them?
Oh, great question. Well, I think the most obvious one is her name is Crazy Eyes, and just to do always the craziest things that to play. There's to play crazy. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. That one feels to me superficial, and then two, there's only so many times that note can land before it just becomes stock. And then, so for myself, I just thought, well, I don't have to play crazy like she's just walking into walls and, walking around on her hands or something, something like this. The name already speaks for itself. So for me, when I read it, I was just seeing someone who was grossly misunderstood, and that I was looking at a love story. This is someone who is in love, and that I could connect to. When you are lost in love, swept up in that story, I don't know a person who hasn't done some things that someone from the outside might look at and say, that was crazy. So you just showed up at his house and carried a radio over your head while Peter Gabriel sang. Some people might say that was crazy.
Have you really done that?
No, I've never done that. But someone say that might be crazy. But, so it depends. Again, it's like going back to perspective. I think it depends on the perspective to her. So for me, I wanted to avoid some of those potential pitfalls and get inside of the openness and the vulnerability that the cost really that comes with being in love.
The show's been, both praised for its diversity, including portraying different ethnicities and races and ages and body shapes and sexualities. But it's also been criticized for relying on stereotypes. And a reviewer from the New York Times wrote, "It seems as if there should be a quota system to prevent any one prison from housing this many fiery Latinas, larger-than-life black women, and pale, snaggle-toothed whites." Taylor, what do you make of these sort of two polarized readings of the show?
Review. Such an articulate man. These two polarized readings. Well, I think, my take on that is actually, it's missing the point to my mind. I mean, I find that it's sort of antithetical to the idea of stereotypes, that we actually get to travel back and see the intricacies and subtleties and individuality of each of these women. And that's sort of the antithesis for me of what a stereotype is. We get a chance to actually see kind of behind the curtain and look into what are the ingredients that make up this person into the whatever the shape is, whatever the however they're presenting themselves to you today. It's kind of beautiful. It's sort of taking, see, you recognize this person and you think you know this person, and we're going to show you, perhaps that there's a lot more there than you previously had thought. So it's taking, you have to play, it's playing with fire, and it's a razor's edge, because you have to play with the idea of stereotype in order to be able to debunk it. There has to be that character that's recognizable to the point that you can then say, see, we're waving this flag. You recognize what we're showing you, and now we're going to go behind there. In doing that, inevitably, because we're all human, we were able to relate to them, because there's a universal chord of truth that runs through all of our experiences, even though they manifest so vastly differently, and we all come from vastly different circumstances. The king of the castle and the guard at the gate have the same beating heart and, similar desires for happiness and, similar pain. And I think, we touch on that in this show.
I would argue that, and I think it's a slightly nuanced point that I'm not sure we have full time for, but I would argue that even though we have so many fiery Latinas and zany African Americans, and what was the last one? Snaggletooth.
Snaggletooth whites.
White snaggletooth whites.
This viewers, I know this man.
Yeah,
this
that
man.
That perhaps there are, that I don't think it's necessary that the screen can hold that many of each group, because generally speaking, that might be what exists on the surface. But if we look at what is happening underneath, the starting point for each of those characters is so, as Taylor said just now, vastly different. You might look at them and think that they're all kind of sort of the same, when it's actually the shading of each person is just slightly different. They just all seem to
Yeah,
live in
that's the thing, that it doesn't read to me as a bunch of fiery Latinas and a bunch of zany African Americans and a bunch of snaggletooth white people. I think that's almost missing the point of the show. I mean, to me, they're not one group. They're all individuals, and that's sort of what we get a chance to see.
and almost like falling into the traps of assuming that they're all the same.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting. It's interesting because that's what our minds want to do. That's what our culture wants to do. Our culture wants to say, like, aesthetic, like, okay, I see visually, okay, you guys look the same. You're going to become a they, and you're going to get all lumped together. And there's a lot more to it than that, you know? Obviously. I mean, but it's not obvious. I mean, because then people watch the show and have that kind of reaction. So
I want to talk about one more thing with both of you, and that, you know, despite the show's thoughtful look at the penal system and its portrayal of varied characters, and then the decidedly dark turn it takes in this season, Orange is the New Black is being submitted under the comedy category at this year's Emmys. Last year at the Golden Globes, for example, it was in the drama category up against things like Breaking Bad. Taylor, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I think the show's just as much a comedy as it is a drama. That's for sure. You know, I think it feels like it's gone rogue. Like, it feels like it went rogue, and I don't know what the show is, but it's.
I mean, do those distinctions even matter? This show's a comedy. This show's a drama.
I don't think it matters. I mean, it matters, I guess, to the awards people because they try to make those categories. But
when you see it as through your prism and approaching it, I mean, do you need to see it in any one way?
No, because I feel like the jokes write themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like, you can see where the funny is. Like, you can see where the funny is, but then you can also see where the heavier moments lie as well. I don't. It's funny because I think it's interesting that this question exists in television, and yet, we're both theater people. There's no play that we pick up and we're like, well, we got, nobody's sitting there in rehearsal telling you, now this is all
right.
You just do, you read the play, you can hear where the laugh is, your job as the actor is to tell the story. And we're not, sitting there thinking like, okay, well, this is just strictly this one thing, so it can only, I don't care if she punches him in the face. It's gonna be, it's like, it has to be funny. We just are trying to tell the best story that we can.
Before I let you go, Uzo, your background is mainly in stage. You were a stage actor. And I read you were going to quit showbiz before landing Orange is the New Black. That's true?
Yes.
Why were you going to quit?
Well, that's a long story. But I had been auditioning and doing all of this, and I just started feeling like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? And it's not happening, and maybe this is the universe telling me and God telling me I'm not supposed to be doing this. And I had so many thoughts. I was like, maybe I should move to South America and become a teacher. Maybe I should go to law school. Like I just
For
started.
real?
Oh, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
were very seriously thinking about that.
Yeah.
Weren't you working with a group of women in
South Africa. I
right.
was while I had kids. I have kids in South Africa that I do a camp with there and build, use the arts for leadership skills. And I was like, maybe I'll go over there and work with my kids and just do all just keep working in the township. And I had so many thoughts. And that same day that literally the same day that I had quit in my mind and had given it up was the day that I found out I got Orange.
Oh, I love that. I mean, isn't that extraordinary in the way it works?
Absolutely.
You let it go.
You've also talked about Taylor hitting the pavement and toiling as an actor before the series.
Yeah.
She was going to go off to Africa.
Yeah.
And make the
What
world
a
a better place.
magnificent
What were you
thing.
going to do if you were going to give it all up? What would you be doing in this moment?
I don't know. That's the one problem that I don't think there's really. I don't know what else I would be in big trouble. I'd been working consistently, but not in the most not as satisfying as Orange has been, and it's pretty spectacular.
I want to thank you both. It's a real pleasure meeting both of you. Thank you for being so thoughtful.
Oh, thanks
Thank
for
you.
letting us wax poetically.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you very much.
Actors Uzo Aduba and Taylor Schilling. They both star in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. The second season is currently available on Netflix. They join me here in Studio Q.